There is a city in the northeastern highlands of Ethiopia that no Western archaeology textbook gives you a full chapter on. It sits at 2,400 meters above sea level. The air is thin. The stone is ancient. The priests who guard its perimeter will tell you, if you ask in the right language, that the giants the Book of Enoch described did not vanish. They retreated. They came here. The city is called Yeha. You were given a footnote, maybe 2 sentences in a concordance margin. The Ethiopian manuscript record gives you something else entirely. The Ge'ez priestly chronicles give you founding dates, dimensions, and the names of the lineages who built the walls. Walk with me into those walls tonight. When this hour concludes, you will not regard these stories as legend. You will call them suppressed archaeology. Open first Enoch chapter 7. Read every line about the Nephilim. You will find their height recorded. You will find their appetites recorded. You will find the earth crying out under their weight. That is it in the fragments the Western canon preserved. The Ethiopian Tewahedo canon does not stop there. The Ge'ez manuscripts held in the monastery libraries of Debre, Damo, and Enda, Abba, Garima carry 3 additional chapters of Enochic material that Richard Lawrence's 1821 translation omitted entirely. Those chapters name a migration. They name a direction. South and east into the highland corridor the Hebrew text calls Cush. The giants did not simply die out in the flood narrative. The priestly tradition of Yeha says some lineages survived into the mountains. The dirt under Yeha is beginning to agree with the manuscript. Stand below the great temple of Yeha with me. The structure is called the Temple of Almaqah. It predates the Aksumite Empire by at least 4 centuries. The German Archaeological Institute excavated its foundations between 2004 and 2009. What they found forced a revision in the dating of highland Ethiopian civilization. The walls are mortarless dressed sandstone. The blocks run 1.2 meters long and 60 centimeters thick. They are fitted with a precision the excavation team's 2009 published report described as requiring a knowledge of geometric tolerancing not otherwise documented in this region before 500 BC. Read that date again. The temple was already standing when Babylon fell to Cyrus. It was already ancient when Alexander crossed the Indus. The construction vocabulary belongs to builders who had been working in stone for a very long time. Look to what the comment sections claim. Those voices argue the giants are mythology. They say Enoch is unreliable. They say the highlands of Ethiopia are romantic but not archaeological. I want you to hold those objections in one hand. Hold them carefully. Then take the other hand and open the report filed by the French Archaeological Mission to Yemen in 2001. Their work at the Awam temple complex in Marib found Sabaean inscriptions referencing a priestly class called the Kabir. The Kabir are described as extraordinarily tall. The inscriptions use a Sabaean root word that translates literally as the tall ones or the ones of great stature. The same root appears in the Ge'ez priestly documents at Yeha. 2 sites, 2 languages, 1 description. The oral tradition the priests of Yeha carry is specific. It does not speak in vague metaphors about spiritual greatness. It gives you numbers. The founding guardians of the Almaqah sanctuary, the tradition calls them the Anbessa, which translates as the lions or the great ones, stood between 8 and 9 cubits in height. A cubit in the Ethiopian priestly reckoning is 52 centimeters. Do the calculation yourself. That is between 4.1 and 4.7 meters. That is not a human height. That is the height the Enochic fragments assign to the Nephilim descendants, the Rephaim, the ones who retreated south when the armies of Canaan drove them from the valleys. The tradition names their last highland stronghold. It names Yeha. Picture the geography that made this city possible. To the north, the Tigray Plateau drops into the Danakil Depression, one of the lowest and hottest places on the surface of the earth. To the west, the Blue Nile watershed. To the east, the trade road descending to the port of Adulis on the Red Sea coast. Yeha sits at the controlling elevation above all of it. Any caravan moving between the coastal ports and the interior had to pass within sight of these walls. Whoever held Yeha held the road. The Sabaean inscription found in 2006 at the base of the Almaqah temple refers to the guardian dynasty of Yeha as the keepers of the southern door. That is a political document. That is a statement of territorial power. Whoever built Yeha built it knowing exactly what it commanded. The German excavations also pulled animal bone deposits from the sanctuary's inner court. The bones were cattle, ibex, and one category that the published report marked simply as unidentified large mammal. The femur fragment in that deposit, catalogue number YH-2007-114, measured 68 centimetres. A human femur averages 45 centimetres. The excavation team noted the anomaly. They did not pursue it further. The report moves on. I want you to sit with that number. 68 centimetres. That is a femur from an individual somewhere between 2.7 and 3 meters tall. The bone was found in a ritual deposit layer carbon dated to between 800 and 700 BC. The earth agreed with the oral tradition. Nobody put that finding on the front page of an archaeology magazine. Now widen the lens to the world that produced Yeha. Around 800 BC, the Sabaean kingdom in Yemen was at the height of its hydraulic power. The Marib Dam was feeding 25,000 acres of farmland. The frankincense trade was moving through the Hadramaut corridor and up the Red Sea. Yeha was the African anchor of that trade network. The Sabaean script on the Yeha temple walls is the same script found at Marib, the same priestly vocabulary, the same astronomical alignments. The temple faces 17 degrees north of east, an alignment the archaeoastronomer Joachim Zeller confirmed in 2011 corresponds precisely to the rising point of the Pleiades at this latitude in 800 BC. That is not a coincidence. That is a planned construction, built by people who read the sky the same way their counterparts in Yemen read it, because they were part of the same civilization. The suppression of this knowledge followed a familiar pattern. When the British Museum catalogued the Jayes manuscripts Bruce brought back from Ethiopia in 1773, the supplementary chapters referencing the highland giant traditions were separated from the main Enoch corpus. They were filed under folklore. They were not included in R.H. Charles's 1912 translation, the translation that became the standard English reference for a century. Charles made choices. He called certain passages later interpolations without explaining the paleographic basis for that judgment. The priestly families of Yeha, who had been copying these manuscripts for 40 generations, were not consulted. Their oral commentary was not recorded. A British scholar in Oxford decided which parts of an African manuscript were authentic, and the world accepted that decision without asking who gave him the authority. I want to tell you about a specific priestly family, the Nebura Ed lineage of Yeha. They have served the Almaqah sanctuary site continuously, according to their own records, since the 6th century BC. Their genealogical rolls, written in ge'ez on vellum, name 89 successive generations of sanctuary guardians. 89. The family patriarch I spoke with through a translator in 2019 said the same thing his father told him and his father's father told him. The founding ancestors of the sanctuary were not like ordinary men in size. He used the ge'ez word abalat. It means the ones of unusual proportion. He said this without drama. He said it the way you describe a historical fact. Because for his family, it is a historical fact. It has been a historical fact for 2,600 years. The monastery at Debre Damo sits 15 kilometers northeast of Yeha on a flat-topped amba, a mesa with vertical cliff faces on every side. The only way up is a rope of braided leather, 15 meters of vertical rock face. Women are not permitted. The monks who live there have been copying manuscripts without interruption since the 6th century AD, and they are copying from sources older than the monastery itself. The library at Debre Damo holds 1,200 vellum manuscripts. Fewer than 200 have been fully catalogued. The uncatalogued majority includes, according to the monastery's own internal register, 37 volumes classified as the Chronicles of the Great Ones. The monks will not remove them from the mountain. They will not photograph them. They will tell you what category they belong to. They will not tell you more than that. The bronze inscription fragment recovered from the outer precinct of the Almaqah temple in 2008, catalogue number YH-2008-032 in the Aksum National Museum, carries a Sabaean dedicatory formula. The translation runs, "To Almaqah, Lord of the Highland Height, from the descendants of those who stood before the flood and did not fall entirely." That language is precise. Not from those who survived the flood the way Noah's descendants are described, from those who stood before it and did not fall entirely. That is a specific theological claim. That is a lineage statement. The inscription was dated by context stratigraphy to the 7th century BC. The priests of Yeha read that inscription every year at the festival of Almaqah. They have been reading it for 2,700 years. The giants, in their tradition, did not vanish. They became the ancestors. The mountains kept them. And the mountains, in Yeha, are still standing.